You whippersnappers are always on your phone. Imagine if you just put that down for a second and picked up a book. Okay, thanks, Gramps. Usually I tell you to mind your own business and let me mindlessly scroll for hours, but that might not be too bad of an idea. Okay, I don't want to sound like an old person here. I don't think inherently that TikTok is bad. I feel like there are some benefits to it. I'm always learning new things on the app, whether that be hacks, history, fun facts. But I probably do spend a little bit more time on there than I should be. So this week we are going to be doing a challenge where I swap out my screen time for reading. Let's just dive into it and we're gonna check off the bat how much time I spend on my phone, which I don't think is that much. I used to spend more time, I think, on it when I was in college and I had more free time, but now that I have like a full-time job and I have adult things to do, I definitely don't spend as much time on my phone. I still do spend a little bit more time than I'd like, and that's why we're doing this challenge, to see how much it is and whether
it's an ungodly amount
or if it's a doable amount that we can kind of swap in for reading. I'm going to check on my screen time. Okay, this last week, my average amount of screen time was 3 hours and 11 minutes, which isn't bad. I kind of expected more, so I'm very happy with that. And I'm gonna break it down as to how many hours I spent on my phone per day of last week. Sunday, I spent 2 hours and 52 minutes. Monday, 2 hours and 45 minutes. Tuesday, 3 hours, 6 minutes. Wednesday, 3 hours and 27 minutes. Thursday was 3 hours, 15 minutes. Friday, at the most, is 4 hours and 17 minutes. And then finally, on Saturday, 2 hours and 33 minutes. So in general, I think we're kind of hitting like that 2 to 3 hour range. And I don't think I've ever really read for that long, at least not all at once. So this might still be kind of a challenge, but I do think these numbers are doable for me to be reading for that long of amount of time. Going into next week, we are going to be reading the same amount for each day that I spent on screen time last week. So for example, I spent 2 hours and 52 minutes on my phone last Sunday, and this upcoming Sunday, we're gonna swap that out and try to read for 2 hours and 52 minutes. I will say I'm gonna probably switch around some of the times for each day going into next week. For example, one of them that I do wanna switch is on Friday last week, I spent 4 hours and 17 minutes on my phone. I'm gonna switch that to Monday for this week because we have a holiday this Monday and I can definitely squeeze in more time reading when it's not an actual work day for me. And that's one of the switcheroos I'm gonna implement. Otherwise, let's keep every day the same and we'll see how we do on this challenge. So I realized that I never really explained the books that I was gonna be reading for this challenge in my introduction. It's the same day though, it's still Sunday as you can see. And I thought, let's just explain it now. It's all good, it's all fine. So first off, I have Fortuna Sworn that I'm gonna be reading on my iPad. I'm about 72% of the way through this, so I'm hoping to finish this during the challenge. Fortuna Sworn is a new adult fantasy romance. It's about this girl who is a supernatural creature called a nightmare, and she has these special abilities to kind of touch someone and then instill like a hallucination of their worst fears in them. And her brother goes missing. She ends up kind of striking a marriage of convenience with this very mysterious fairy dude in order to get into the fairyland where she believes her brother is and hopefully save him. I'm liking it so far. It's kind of a very standard fantasy romance and I don't think it's doing anything particularly like new and jaw-dropping, but it's a fun time nonetheless, and sometimes that's all you really need from a book. The little bit more heavier read that's probably going to take up a majority of this challenge is Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. This is the last book in the Greenbone saga and I'm slowly going through it. It is really heavy. There's a lot of crazy moments that are going on. The part that I just finished was actually like very shocking and I think could change the whole trajectory of the plot. But this is a urban fantasy and it's about an island where Jade is this very valuable resource and there are these two clans that kind of control the island. They're kind of fighting to control the capital city as well as all of the jade that is being produced in this country. It centers on this family that is the leadership of one of the clans and the struggles they go through to maintain their power, as well as the losses they go through being a part of this clan war. I'm really loving it. I've actually read a huge chunk of this for the challenge today. As a reminder, today we are supposed to read for 2 hours and 52 minutes, and I have currently read 1 hour and 5 minutes of Jade Legacy, so I think I don't really want to do the math. Let me just do the quick math. I think we have 1 hour and 47 minutes to go. So I'm excited to get through more of this and find out if that shocking plot point is really going to shake things up and put everything on its head, or if, you know, things stabilize and the path that I thought we were going on continues. We are now at 2 hours and 57 minutes, so we did hit our goal, and I am now about halfway through Jade Legacy. Things did stabilize from the last point that I was talking about. However, there was some really emotional moments where I was really scared and then shocked, and now there's kind of discussion about who our true enemy is, who do we want to put all of our effort into fighting, and maybe it's not who we traditionally believed our enemies to be. There's also been more talk of the future of leadership within the two clans, and we get a new perspective that I really wasn't expecting to get, but it makes sense for why we're getting it at this certain point. This is just such a big, vast world, and we are continually being introduced to new characters, and despite that, I continue to fall in love with all of them, which I think goes to show the great character work that's done in the trilogy as well, aside from the great action scenes and great world building. So for tomorrow, I think we're going to try to get a little bit more through Jade Legacy, but I also want to take a crack at finishing Fortuna Sworn and just checking that off as the first book that I've read in the year of 2023. So today is the day that I switched out with last week's Friday screen time, meaning that we are trying to read for 4 hours and 17 minutes today, and I have currently read for 2 hours and 13 minutes, so we're about halfway there. I spent all that time reading Jade Legacy again by Fonda Lee. I'm now about, I believe, 60% of the way through, as you can see by my little tabs here. So this is all I have left to read. And we definitely start seeing more of the kids and their opinions on the clan, and kind of maybe they have a little bit more modern take on where they want to take the clan in future leadership, but there's some conflict between the two generations on where they see the clans going, how that culture is changing. We also see the clan of the main family that we're following here break into different countries and start new businesses there, as the businesses they have in older countries is kind of slowing down. And because of that, we're introduced to a number of new enemies that have put our main characters in a very vulnerable position that they haven't experienced in a very long time. You know, they're growing older. They felt more secure, maybe a little bit invincible, and now they're being put back into their place by these new enemies. Every chapter, every couple pages in this book is shocking. There's always something new happening, and it's always got me on the edge of my seat, or just gasping out loud and crying and being like, I don't know what's happening. But it's a thrilling ride, and I really didn't think that would continue to happen. going into this last book, I thought it would be kind of a wrapping up of a lot of the issues that we saw in the first 2 books of the series, but finally continues to shock us, introduce us to new issues, new problems, and new conflicts between our favorite characters. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say any more because I don't want to spoil the series, but that's what's happened so far in the most recent section that I've read. I think for the rest of the time, I'm going to try to finish reading Fortuna Sworn, and then if I complete that and we still have some leftover time today, hit back on Jade Legacy. We finally did it, guys. We're coming in now for 4 hours and 17 minutes. And during that time, I did finish Fortuna Sworn, and it left on a huge cliffhanger that leaves a lot of questions unanswered. I was shocked, I was flabbergasted, and I'm definitely going to be picking up the sequel now. And then I read a little bit more of Jade Legacy. I'm now on page 520. And the unthinkable just happened. Something that I could have never predicted. I am also shocked and flabbergasted. So this past 2 hours has just been a series of crazy moments and crazy twists, and I'm having a great time. The goal for today was to read for 3 hours and 6 minutes, and I've already made some pretty good progress at 1 hour and 56 minutes in, so I'm a little bit more than halfway there towards the goal. And during that whole time, I have been reading Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee, and I've made some really good progress. I have about like 100 pages left to go or so. So we are nearing the end. It has been an incredible journey with some of my favorite characters. We've gone through a lot of angst and turmoil and very painful moments, but the characters have grown from it. Their relationships have grown better from it. And now I'm kind of just looking forward to happy reunions, happy, hopeful thoughts for the future, and looking towards the clan's legacy. Goal of 3 hours and 6 minutes, and actually did not finish Jade Legacy. I have about 50 pages left to go. Not a lot of updates from last time that we read. I don't want to talk too much about it and kind of spoil the series. All I'm going to say is things are heading for a close. I definitely can see where it's going and how everything's going to be wrapped up, and we're just excited to finish this off and probably mark this as one of my favorite series that I've read ever. I finally finished, everyone. Jade Legacy, such a good book, a beautiful ending, super emotional and poignant, and I could not have asked for a better conclusion to one of my favorite series. Honestly, I'm gonna miss these characters that have really become like family to me. They feel like old friends, and I'm just happy that the ending that we did get was everything that I wanted. And although it hurt, it was done right. I've been reading for an hour and 20 minutes. Today we're aiming for, I believe, 3 hours and 27 minutes, so we have about 2 hours left to go. And with that, we're going to be picking up some new books for the rest of this video. With me, I have Renegades and Vicious as the 2 books that we're going to be reading for the rest of this video. I'm going to be starting off with Renegades and then getting into Vicious if we have some time. I think it's going to be a really fun, light read, hopefully, and very fast paced, and it will be able to kind of bring my mind off of the
Emotional turmoil and angst
that I went through with Jade Legacy. We have reached 3 hours and 27 minutes for today, and within that time I made some really good progress on Renegades. I'm about 125 pages into this so far. This is actually about 2 teenagers, one of which is a girl who grew up in a very famous villain family, and years ago her family was defeated by these superheroes who call themselves the Council. 2 very prominent members of the Council are the parents of our second main character, who is trying to make his way up the ranks and become a very lauded superhero, but he's been kind of struggling because at first glance, his powers probably don't seem to be great in combat. They're on opposing sides, so you would really think that they're enemies, but they're kind of drawn to each other. They have some connection. So despite being on different sides and both of their sides having respectively hurt each other's family, they seem to be kind of on the same path towards going and working with each other. But I think it's going to be very secretive. They're not going to be able to share it with each of their sides respectively, or they'll be ousted as kind of traitors. It really gives star-crossed lovers, 2 teenagers from very different sides of the world trying to, come together, but it seems like every force in society is telling them not to. And despite the kind of classic star-crossed lovers romance that I see coming to life, I think the superpowers and the setting make it really unique and keep me engaged, wanting to learn about all these different superpowers and where the story is going to go, because I don't think it's going to be very obvious.
Like superheroes win and villains lose.
Because one of our main characters is from that villainous side. Made some really good progress on Renegades today. I'm about halfway through already. I'm currently on page 397, and we've also reached our goal of 3 hours and 15 minutes for reading today. Now regarding Renegades, how are you doing? What's going on? Because this is young adult and it kind of reads younger, this has been a really quick read. It's very fast paced. There's always something happening within every chapter that keeps you engaged and keeps you wanting to read more. I will say there are parts that are a little bit unbelievable and a little bit illogical, and I wish the characters would kind of, smarten up and figure out what's going on. For example, our main character, Nova, is a villain, and she's got this secret identity, but it's not really a great secret identity because she has the same first name, has a very similar power, also has very similar interests, meaning that she likes to tinker and invent things as her real self does. So it's not like a great secret identity. It kind of is like her own personality with a new last name. So I'm very much like, why are none of these characters like putting 2 and 2 together and figuring out that she's the villain that they all are looking for? But hey, you need to keep the plot moving, and this is definitely one of those moments where you kind of have to suspend a little disbelief and kind of go with the flow of the story in order to really enjoy it. So that's what I'm doing right now. This story also has a kind of very common dynamic I've been seeing lately, and I really enjoy actually, which is when you kind of get the badass, really hardened female character paired up with this really morally good, believes in the good of everyone, kind of shyer, soft, and kind of artsy male character. And I just love that dynamic. It reminds me of some of my favorite couples like Katniss and Peeta. Also reminds me of Kel and Lila from the Darker Shade of Magic series. And both of those couples, I just really love how the characters kind of play off each other, but also balance each other out and give each other these new viewpoints and perspectives that allow them to appreciate maybe a more hardened approach or a softer, more gentler approach to this society that they're living in. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the rest of the book. I have a feeling that there's going to be a pretty big confrontation at the end, a kind of betrayal discussion, and although it's going to be very painful and hard to go through, it's definitely going to set up a great place for the characters to enter into the second book. So today's goal was to read for 2 hours and 45 minutes, which I did hit. And that entire time I was reading Renegades, which I got really far in. I only have about 50 pages left until the end, so definitely gonna be finishing this tomorrow. From where we left off, some of my thoughts. I kind of hit a slumpy, slow patch in the middle of this book. I think it's because this book is very focused on secrets, and as a reader, you're keen to 2 major secrets from the beginning. So after you kind of get past the world building and the main plot, there are a lot of moments where you're just kind of waiting for the characters to catch up with you and figure out what the secrets are. And that can get kind of slow and boring because I feel like you already know what the secret is. However, 3/4 of the way through, we do get a kind of new revelation, something unexpected, a secret that kind of re-engaged me within the novel. We also get some insight into how the history of the world, the past events that we thought we knew, probably are not exactly as we thought. Maybe there's a little propaganda, maybe it's been embellished. So that's also really interesting, and I think it's going to really affect the events going into the second book. I will say that my theory about how the book and the plot were going to go for this isn't really how it's going. I'm starting to doubt if there actually is really going to be that huge confrontation and betrayal at the end of this novel, because from what I see, we're not really going there. We're actually taking a very different path, and it might be that the secrets that we've been keen to since the beginning of this book kind of continue on into the second novel, which I'm okay with because I think at the end of this novel there's going to be an event that changes up the dynamic going into the second novel. Like I said, a really quick, fun read. Not too much critical thinking, just going along for the ride, the action scenes, just straight vibing. Really enjoyed it so far. I'm interested to see what happens in this last 50 pages and how that kind of informs what happens in the second novel. Today's goal was to read for 2 hours and 33 minutes, which is the least amount of this whole week. So we're ending very easy. So far I've read for 1 hour and 8 minutes. And during that entire time, I was finishing up Renegades, which I have now completed. This ended on a very unexpected, shocking cliffhanger. Not the cliffhanger that I thought it was going to end on. We don't really get that whole confrontation, the betrayal that I thought was happening, so that's probably going to happen in the second book. But the cliffhanger that we do get, I was flabbergasted. I don't really understand. I'm confused on how it happened and why it wasn't mentioned earlier in the novel, but I'm sure we're going to figure that out in the second book. This last part also does a lot of kind of relationship building between our 2 main characters, so they're definitely now kind of like romantic interests, and I'm excited to see how that relationship develops going into the second book, because right now they're kind of just like
2 awkward, shy teenagers
who, because of their circumstances, are kind of just avoiding admitting their feelings to each other. So definitely want to see that in the second book. And yeah, just great first book to a series. Very quick, very action-packed, and just a fun ride all around. So now I have about like 1 hour and 30 minutes left of the challenge, and with that, we're going to be starting on Vicious by V. Schwab. Definitely not going to finish this novel within the challenge. That would be insane. But I think I could get maybe like 100 or so pages into this and probably finish it out this month and then add that to all the books that I read in January. So that's a win. Vicious actually is about 2 college friends, roommates, who end up doing some type of science experiment or thesis where they investigate people who have extraordinary abilities, or they kind of give themselves extraordinary abilities. But I'm going to be reading a little bit of this, and hopefully within the first 100 or pages or so I get a better idea of the plot and I can chat about this. to you guys for our last update, and then we can close this video out. The last update for this video. So I've reached 2 hours 33 minutes, our last kind of goal for this challenge, and started on Vicious. I'm about 80 pages into this now, and I'm really enjoying it, just as I suspected that I would. This book is actually told in dual timelines, so we're going back and forth in time, which I didn't know going into it. And usually I'm not too big of a fan of dual timelines sometimes, because I feel like I usually get more invested into one timeline and kind of get bored with the other. But with this, I'm heavily invested and intrigued in both timelines. Now, what is this about? So the first timeline we have deals in the present day, where Victor, one of our main characters, has just gotten out of prison. He's been in prison for 10 years, and he's out on a mission to find and hunt this man named Eli. Flashback 10 years, Victor and Eli were college roommates, best friends, and they were working on their theses, and Eli's thesis in particular was about extraordinary people, trying to find out the cause and the reason for why certain people get superpowers, essentially. And they figure out that the cause of this is actually near-death experiences, and they go on to try to replicate that within themselves and give themselves superpowers. Now, by present day, we find out that they were seemingly successful because both Eli and Victor have superpowers. I'm not quite too sure exactly the full extent of both of their powers in the present day, but the interesting part is, how did their relationship crumble, and now why in the present day does Victor want to kill Eli? Moving on now, I want to give some final thoughts about this entire challenge and all the books that we did read. So to recap about the books that we read in this challenge, first off, we had Fortuna Sworn, that new adult fantasy romance with that marriage of convenience, and I thought that was a pretty standard fantasy romance, but still really enjoyable, and I do see myself picking up the next book in that series. Then we finished off the Greenbone Saga with Jade Legacy. Absolutely phenomenal conclusion to the series. Made me cry, made me laugh, just all the emotions packed into this book. And if I haven't convinced you yet to like pick up the series, pick up the Greenbone Saga, guys. It's so good. Then we went on and picked up Renegades, which we flew through. I think I read this in like 3 days, which is insane for like the size it is. I really like the dynamic between the two main characters, that superhero villain that are also kind of keeping secrets from each other, but are also kind of falling in love. Crazy. So I think that's a very interesting dynamic relationship that they're building up, and because of that and because of the huge cliffhanger that we got left on, definitely see myself also picking up the second book for this series. And then finally we started off a little bit on Vicious, which I already just spoke about, and also see myself really loving. In general, a really great week of reading, and we've definitely found some really great series that I do plan to continue going into the future. Now to talk about all the time that I've spent on my phone in comparison to reading. I don't think I spent that much time on my phone, but I was surprised to see like how much it was, considering I feel like I maybe pick up my phone a lot and put it down, and there's only like maybe before bed I'm scrolling through TikTok for like an hour or so. But I didn't think it was that much time until I really started reading, and trying to read straight through for like 2 or 3 hours is actually really tough, seeing as I only usually read for like an hour straight through, and then that's all my reading done for the day. Breaking it up over the day is a little bit more manageable, but going forward, I think when I think, hey, I don't have any time to read today, like I'm not going to read my 50 pages or so, I'm going to recognize that maybe if I replace that time on TikTok with reading, then hey, I would have time. So I'm gonna stop trying to make excuses for myself. That's my own lesson that I'm taking away from this video. Encourage you guys to also check out how much time you spend on your phone. And with that, I want to say thanks everyone if you stuck around for this long. Comment down below if you have read any of these series or books and what you thought about them. And if you did enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. and I will see you in the next one. Bye.